I'm Rachel Carter, 24, founder of a trauma recovery center, and tonight I'm standing in the very ballroom where my family is being honored for their so-called legacy. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd finally see me, or at least remember I exist. Even after rebuilding my life from the silence they left me in, I was still just the dramatic one. They left me bleeding in a wrecked car while they rushed my sister to get her curls styled on time. What they didn't know was I kept every receipt, and I didn't need to shout to be heard. They handed me the keys with a shrug, no eye contact, no warning, like I was borrowing a mop, not a car with bald tires and a brake light that hadn't worked since sophomore year. "Just pick up your sister after class," Mom said, tossing her phone back into her purse, "and don't be late. She has that hair appointment at 6. It wasn't a request. It never was. My name wasn't listed on the salon reservation or even mentioned when plans were made. But the second someone needed a ride, a pickup, a last-minute fix, it was always me. Rachel, the gap filler, the driver, the one they didn't worry about. Dad didn't even look up from his laptop. He just muttered, "Don't take the highway. You know the tires are shot," as if I had another choice. The car had no GPS, the AC barely worked, and the wipers squealed like something alive. I had asked twice in the past year if they could get it serviced. "It's not that bad," Mom had said. "We have more important things to pay for." I didn't argue. I never did. That afternoon the clouds moved like they had something to say. Gray thick, ready to burst. I was 17 and already knew how to drive like I didn't matter. That's the skill you pick up when you're always responsible for people who won't lift a finger for you. Alyssa sent me a text while I was pulling into the school parking lot. "Can we stop for a smoothie first? Hair stuff doesn't start till 6:10. "No, please. No thanks." Just the assumption I'd say yes. She bounced into the passenger seat with the confidence of someone who'd never had to earn kindness. She was 2 years younger, but already somehow more central to the family's orbit than I had ever been. Her leggings matched her scrunchie. Her nails were still perfect from her birthday manicure. "You're quiet," she said halfway through her drink. "Just watching the road?" I replied, gripping the wheel as the first drops began to hit the windshield. The wipers screeched and skipped across the glass, leaving streaks. Alyssa turned up the music. The rain came harder, slanting, relentless. I slowed, but the sedan fought back like it was offended by caution. The tires hydroplaned slightly at every turn. Still, no one had ever taken that seriously. Safety was for show. Image, that was the real priority. We were 5 minutes from the salon. I remember that number so clearly because I checked the clock before the world flipped. I never saw the other car coming. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe the lights blurred together. Or maybe it was just the kind of bad luck that happens when no one around you ever plans ahead for your safety. A flash, a scream, hers not mine. Glass, the crunch of metal, the sound of my body hitting the steering wheel. Then silence. I blinked. Something warm pooled in my mouth. My chest burned from the airbag. My arm didn't respond when I tried to move it. I didn't know where my phone had gone. My leg, the left, was cold. Not cold like winter, cold like missing, like it didn't belong to me anymore. "Alyssa," I managed to whisper. She whimpered. "I'm okay. Just my cheek, I think." The passenger side was dented in, but not crushed. She unbuckled, trembling but mobile. Meanwhile, I was pinned. I could feel blood running down my temple into my ear. I kept thinking someone will come. They have to. And then headlights. Through the cracked glass, through the rain still hammering the car roof like accusations, I saw it. Our SUV. Relief is cruel when it comes too soon. I thought I was saved. They pulled up behind us. They got out. And they didn't come to my door. "Emily," Mom shouted, rushing toward the passenger side. "Her name is Alyssa," I tried to say, but the sound didn't come out right. My mouth was full of copper. I heard Dad's voice. "This car's a piece of junk." I told her not to take it on wet roads. Mom was checking Alyssa's face. "Your curls, did they get wet?" I think I scratched my cheek. "We can't miss the appointment. They charge if you're late." I groaned. I tried to lift my hand, but only my fingers moved. "Mom," I whispered so quiet I barely heard it myself. No one looked at me. "I think my arm's broken," I said again, louder. "Nothing. They started guiding Alyssa toward the SUV. The door beeped open. "Dad," I said, panic climbing now. "Please help. I can't move my leg." He looked back once. Just once. "If you were strong enough to drive yourself into this mess, you can get yourself out," he said flatly. And then the door slammed. The engine turned. They left. They left me bleeding in the car they never fixed. I don't know how long I stayed there alone with nothing but the rain and the ping of broken glass settling. At some point, the sharpness of pain dulled into something distant. Not numb, just background noise, like the tick of a clock you forget is ticking until everything else goes silent. I kept staring at the empty road in front of me, half expecting their brake lights to flicker back on. Maybe they'd realized. Maybe they'd turn around. But they didn't. The windshield was spider-webbed with fractures. Through it, I could barely make out the trees shaking in the storm. I looked at the passenger seat. Alyssa's smoothie cup had rolled to the floor, still intact. My arm was swollen at the elbow, pinned awkwardly, and my leg was twisted underneath the console. I breathed through the ache. Short, quiet breaths. If I focused on something small, counting the drops blinking with each lightning flash, I could stay conscious. Time didn't move. But I did. I don't know how. Maybe it was adrenaline, maybe spite, maybe something older than both, something from deep inside me that had always been ignored but never extinguished. I slid my good hand down the seat, feeling blindly. My fingers brushed a piece of glass, then the corner of my phone. Cracked, of course. Dead, of course. No signal, even if it weren't. So I moved. I unbuckled. My body screamed. I screamed too, but quietly. The kind of scream you do behind your teeth, the kind of scream no one hears. I dragged myself across the center console, over bits of glass, over the smoothie cup, over a jacket Alyssa had thrown back there weeks ago. My jeans caught on a piece of metal tore. I could feel wetness spreading under me, not just from the rain. It took everything to push the passenger door. I kicked with my right leg once, twice. It creaked open an inch, then another. And I slipped out, landing half in a puddle, half on the asphalt. My hand slapped the ground. I was out. I think I cried then, not from pain, just from the coldness of the air, from the unfairness of it all, from the realization that no one had come back. 20 minutes later, a car slowed. A woman in her 50s got out. She wore a poncho and plastic clogs. Her eyebrows were drawn too dark. Her mascara had bled from the rain. She saw me and gasped, "Jesus, are you? Oh my God!" She didn't wait for an answer. She was already dialing. The ambulance came fast, lights painting the road red and blue. I remember the crunch of boots near my head, a hand on my forehead, a voice saying, "You're safe now." Safe. The words stung. In the hospital, everything was bright and loud. I was rolled through corridors that smelled like bleach and lemon candy. A nurse asked for my emergency contact. I gave her their names. I didn't know who else to say. She nodded, said they would be called. I was in surgery for 3 hours. When I woke up, it was night. The window showed only shadows. My arm was in a sling. My leg was elevated, thickly wrapped. My mouth tasted like metal. My head ached, not sharp, but constant, like a pulse under the skin. The first person who came in wasn't family. It was a young man with a clipboard. He was from billing. "Hi, Rachel," he said gently. "We need a guardian's signature for insurance purposes. Your parents haven't responded to the hospital calls yet. Would you like us to try again?" I didn't speak. I just stared at the wall behind him where a clock ticked past 2:47 a.m. They hadn't come, not when I was in the wreck, not when I was dragged from the car, not even when the hospital called. The next morning, a nurse brought toast and Jell-O. I asked if anyone had called. She shook her head. Late afternoon, a familiar voice breezed in like nothing had happened. "Deborah Carter." Starbucks cup in hand, phone in the other, sunglasses still on indoors. "Oh, finally," she said. "They said you'd be up by now." I didn't respond. She looked at the IV in my arm. Wow. Drama. "You're gonna have to pay some of this off, Rachel. We're not made of money." She took a sip of her coffee. Behind her, Dad appeared. Crossed arms, tired eyes. "Next time drive safer," he muttered. I blinked. My arm throbbed. My leg itched under the cast. My chest rose, but I didn't speak. They looked at me like I had inconvenienced them, like I had done this to them. Alyssa didn't come, not that night, not the next morning, but she did post on Instagram. I saw it 2 days later when a nurse helped me charge my phone. The post was already flooded with likes and heart emojis. A photo of Alyssa at the salon, curls perfectly blown out, captioned, "Car crash drama but still slayed." The comments were worse. Iconic. "Your fam is unreal. Slay even in chaos. Hope your sis is okay, but you ate." I stared at it, thumb hovering, heart hollowing. They didn't know. No one did. They didn't know I'd bled alone for 20 minutes while my family prioritized hair over my body, that my leg was still numb, that the inside of my mouth was still raw from the airbag, that the bruise on my chest throbbed every time I breathed. But the world thought my family was iconic. That was the moment it shifted. Not anger, not yet, just realization. I wasn't their daughter. I was a burden they'd failed to remove. And now I was inconvenient to explain. After discharge, I was sent to a rehab center. My injuries were too extensive for home recovery, or at least that's what the hospital said. Mom never argued. They didn't visit, didn't call, didn't send balloons or a card. But I did get a forwarded email. Alyssa had posted a TikTok room tour of the house. My room had been turned into storage. Oops, guess we needed the space. She giggled to her phone, panning across my old desk, now piled with boxes and gift bags. I watched the clip from a narrow hospital bed with rails on both sides and a nurse call button I never used. 6 weeks later, I limped home. Crutches, a stiff brace, scars along my ribs. My shoulder still couldn't lift above my chest. I opened the front door quietly. No one said welcome back. No one said we missed you. Alyssa looked up from her phone and frowned. Ugh, does this mean you're back already? I was using your desk. Mom walked past the hallway with a box of new dining chair cushions. She didn't stop. Don't get blood on those, she said. They're new. I stood there, still gripping the doorknob. I hadn't even taken off my shoes. That night, I folded laundry with one working arm. I scrubbed the bathroom floor with my good legs stretched out. I listened because that was the only power I had left. And what I learned over time, in between dishes and ignored glances and slammed doors, was this: when I turned 16, my parents had taken out a small life insurance policy in my name. They said it was for college, a just-in-case plan. But after the crash, they tried to collect, while I was still alive. The inquiry was rejected by the insurance company. The agent had called the hospital directly to confirm, but it explained everything: why they didn't come, why they never helped, why they looked at me like I was a failed transaction. They had planned for me to be gone, but I wasn't, and now they didn't know what to do with me, so I made a choice. I stopped asking, I stopped apologizing, I stopped bleeding, and quietly I started planning. They said I should be grateful. "You're alive," Mom said flatly, as if that covered everything. "You didn't die, so stop acting like you did." Dad muttered 2 nights after I came home while stirring a pot of chili I wasn't offered. It became the script, one I was supposed to memorize and recite whenever pain flared in my shoulder or when my leg locked during the night. If I winced reaching for something, I was milking it. If I walked slower than usual, I was doing it for attention. But Alyssa was treated like a returning war hero. "She's been through so much," Mom would say to her friends on speakerphone loud enough for me to hear from the hallway. "You should have seen her face," she told someone once. "She was terrified in that car. That poor girl. Never mind that Alyssa walked away with a scratch. Never mind that the hospital record listed no physical injuries. What mattered was the performance, the image, the story they could tell to earn sympathy and admiration from the neighbors." Deborah Carter's family had survived a scare and come out stronger, except one of us was still limping, and no one asked why. One afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table sorting pills into a cheap plastic organizer from the pharmacy. Alyssa strolled in chatting on FaceTime, her voice high and sparkling. "Oh my God, yes, like right after the crash, I was literally shaking. But Mom was there so fast. She's amazing." She glanced at me as she said it, almost like daring me to react. I didn't. I just snapped another compartment shut. She kept talking. "Yeah, Rachel's fine. She's dramatic. Always has been. But whatever, I'm just glad I didn't have to cancel my appointment." She laughed, then the kind of laugh that fills a room even when it has no reason to. When she was done, she tossed her bag onto the table. It knocked over my water. "Oh, oops," she said, already halfway up the stairs. The water seeped into the edges of my prescription papers. I watched the ink blur. It looked like tears. That night, we had dinner at the table like we used to. Or more accurately, like we used to pretend we were used to. Mom placed bowls with robotic efficiency. Alyssa scrolled through her phone. Dad grunted at the TV on low volume. I reached for the bread basket. It was empty. "There's more in the oven," I said quietly. No one moved. "I can get it," I added, standing my legs still stiff. "No need." Mom replied, still not looking at me. "Alyssa, honey." Alyssa sighed, stood up, opened the oven, and pulled the tray out. "It's hot," she said. "She's fine," Mom said, smiling. "She always bounces back." I stood there, half out of my chair, still reaching. No one noticed. Or maybe they did, and that was worse. After dinner, Alyssa got the couch and the remote. I stayed upstairs. From my window, I watched the neighborhood kids play in the street. One of them fell off a scooter, and within seconds, 2 adults rushed over, checking his knees, brushing his hair from his eyes. No one brushed my hair. Not then. Not ever really. The next morning, I found my name scratched out. Literally. There was a whiteboard in the hallway, the kind you find in homes trying to be organized. On it, a weekly schedule. Alyssa's dance class, Dad's dental appointment, Mom's bridge night, and under Thursday, Rachel PT R4 Norzo. Someone had taken a dry erase marker and scribbled it into a blur of blue smudge. When I pointed it out, Mom waved a hand. "Oh, I meant to update that. They canceled again, right? The insurance stuff's a mess." They hadn't canceled. I had just stopped asking for a ride. The week crawled. The rehab center called. I walked there. 2 miles. With a cane. By the time I got back, Alyssa had friends over. The living room was a cloud of perfume laughter and the rhythmic click of photo apps. "You're in the frame," one of them said when I stepped into view. Alyssa didn't even look up. "Could you Not." I backed out of the room. The edge of my cane caught the corner of a rug and I stumbled, catching myself on the hallway table. No one asked if I was okay. That night I overheard Mom on the phone again. She was in the kitchen, her voice low but practiced. "Honestly, Rachel's been moody. I think it's the meds. She was always sensitive, but now it's just exhausting. We're walking on eggshells." She paused. "And Alyssa, she's so strong, so composed. She really stepped up." I walked past the doorway. Mom looked at me mid-sentence and didn't pause. Anyway, she said to whoever was on the line, "We all process trauma differently." The word trauma sat in the air like a guest no one wanted to acknowledge. After dinner, I sat at the table folding napkins. My arm still trembled when I applied too much pressure, but no one noticed. Alyssa walked in holding her phone, smirking. "Guess who just hit 10K on TikTok?" "Congratulations," I said quietly. "She posted that salon pic again," Mom said, setting down a glass of wine. "The one from that night. It's gorgeous." Alyssa beamed. "You should have seen the comments," she said. "Everyone thought we were like goals. One girl said we were the real Kardashians." I stared at my hands. One of my fingernails was still chipped from the accident. I hadn't bothered to fix it. She even captioned it with your name, Mom added. Something like, "My sister's chaos couldn't stop the curls." I thought that was clever. "She got so much engagement," Alyssa grinned. I didn't respond, because I wasn't supposed to. That was the unspoken rule in the house. Don't make things uncomfortable, don't interrupt the story, don't remind anyone that the chaos came with blood bruises and bones out of place. Later that evening, I went into the garage to find an old heating pad. My leg was aching. Tucked between boxes, I found a storage bin labeled "Ours Stuff." Inside, my old swim medals, a paper from 3rd grade with a gold star, a photo of me in braces holding Alyssa as a baby, and a folder. It was sealed, but not tightly. Inside, an insurance document. My name, my date of birth, term life coverage, signed by both my parents. I stared at the effective date, 3 months before the crash. 3, not 6, not a year. 3. A file note in the corner said, "For college funding, accidental coverage." Below it, a handwritten sticky claim in process. Contacted agent, awaiting verification. My heart didn't race, it just stilled. Everything rearranged itself quietly in my mind. They hadn't just left me in that car. They had hoped I wouldn't come out. I placed the folder back where I found it, not because I was afraid of being caught, but because something inside me decided to stop asking for clarity from people who never once offered it freely. The next morning, Mom called out from the kitchen without turning. "Hey, Rach, could you clean out the upstairs linen closet? It's getting crowded." No mention of my leg, or the fact that I had physical therapy in an hour. She didn't ask if I had plans, because she assumed I didn't, because in her world, I existed only when needed. I said sure and climbed the stairs. Halfway through the linen closet, I found more of my things: old journals, school projects, a copy of a college acceptance letter I never got to use. It was all crammed between towels and fabric softener sheets, as if I was the mess they kept trying to tuck away. That afternoon, I overheard Alyssa in the living room rehearsing lines for a class project. "She's such a burden," she said in a mock voice, reading from her script. Then, breaking character, she laughed and added, "Ugh, I know someone like that." Her friend laughed too. I didn't hear the rest. I didn't need to. I went back upstairs, lay flat on my back, and stared at the ceiling until it blurred. That night over dinner, Dad asked Alyssa how her project went. "She nailed it," Mom chimed in. "She's so natural on camera. Not like Rachel. She always hated the spotlight." They laughed softly. I didn't. Instead, I folded my napkin in half, then in quarters, then again, and I looked at them, really looked. I saw people who had made a choice, a quiet one, a permanent one, and maybe they didn't say it out loud, maybe they never would, but it was written into every gesture, every dinner served with my plate set last, every event where my name wasn't on the list, every "don't be dramatic" when I tried to speak. And now in silence they had made it clear I was the chapter they never wanted to reread. So I stopped writing it for them. That was the night I opened a private browser tab on my phone. I searched trauma recovery scholarships, online college courses for adult learners, rooms for rent near downtown. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I was done bleeding in places that called it drama. I didn't leave with a suitcase. I left with a plastic laundry basket, a duffel bag with a busted zipper, and a pillow I'd had since middle school. No one offered to help carry them to the curb. Mom had been in the backyard watering her roses when I walked out the front door. She didn't say goodbye, didn't ask where I was going, didn't even look up. Dad had grunted something that sounded like, "Take care," without meeting my eyes. Alyssa was filming a dance video in the living room. When I passed behind her, she paused the recording and snapped, "Ugh, you ruined the shot." I didn't apologize. I didn't speak. I just walked out the door, closed it behind me, and didn't look back. I moved in with a retired schoolteacher named Mrs. Elkins who rented out her basement. The ceilings were low, the walls smelled faintly of cedar and dust, and the water heater knocked like it was angry every time I took a shower. But it was mine. There were 3 locks on the door. I installed the 3rd one myself. I got a job at a call center in a town 3 bus stops away. The pay was awful, the hours worse, but it was consistent. I learned how to ask people for things without sounding like I was begging, how to be polite when someone called me names, how to disappear in a room without actually leaving it. At night, I took online classes, psychology, human behavior, trauma science. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was studying the thing I hadn't been allowed to talk about. I didn't tell anyone where I lived. I didn't post. I didn't reply to texts from Alyssa, which mostly said things like, "You should come by Mom's less mad now," or "Can you Venmo me for that thing I paid for?" Instead, I saved every paycheck, every tip from holiday overtime, every bonus for not missing a shift. I kept the cash in a mason jar hidden behind cans of soup. 5 years passed like that, quietly, privately, deliberately. And then one afternoon on a break between calls, I saw an ad online. It wasn't flashy. Just a listing, commercial property for sale, salon space, good light, ready for new vision. The address stopped me. It was the salon. Their salon. The one where Alyssa had posed with curls while I was in a hospital bed. The one where Mom used to host spring beauty events and brag about her empire. I clicked the link. Half of the business had been sold already, but the other half, the quiet, controlling half, was still open to offers. I didn't hesitate. I made one call, introduced myself with a new name, scheduled a private meeting, signed the paperwork with a new signature. And I didn't tell a soul. Not yet, because it wasn't time. Not until the flyers started appearing. Spring renewal event hosted by Deborah Carter. Special guest stylists, giveaways, and more. It was always the same event, the same energy, the same belief that everyone had forgotten. But I hadn't, and I was done playing the forgotten one. I walked into the salon the night before the event like I belonged there because now legally I did. The receptionist, young, probably just out of high school, barely glanced up when I entered. She was scrolling through a tablet and chewing gum. She didn't recognize me. That was the point. "Hi," I said calmly. "I'm here to prep the floor for tomorrow." "Oh, right," she said, handing me a key ring. "Management said someone might come by." I took the keys. They were heavier than expected. Real. Cold. Inside the salon was dim and echoing. Without the buzz of blow dryers or the hiss of curling irons, the space felt hollow like a body without a pulse. The walls were still covered with posters. Deborah Carter's face featured prominently in 3 of them, grinning with a curling iron raised like a trophy. Beside her, Alyssa, in soft focus, curls perfect shoulders, bare captioned "Beauty is inherited." I stood in front of that one for a long time. Then I took it down. One by one, I pulled the images off the walls, unpinned the client schedules, erased the dry erase boards, opened the computer files, and changed the confirmation messages for every guest. Instead, they would receive a new notice in the morning: event canceled. Management has changed. Please contact Dr. Rivers with questions. Yes, Dr. Rivers. My new name, my degree, my story. I had earned every syllable. I printed the new signs on thick paper, clean fonts, black ink. I laminated them with a hand crank machine someone had left in the supply closet. I posted them on every mirror, every door, every reception stand. The final touch was a new welcome board at the entrance. It didn't say Spring Renewal. It didn't say Carter Salon. It just said, "The Resilience Room opening soon." And under that, private trauma therapy for teens and young adults. No flourish. No tagline, just truth. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then I walked to the office, locked the door behind me, and placed a single envelope on the desk. Inside was a letter from my lawyer, a copy of the purchase agreement, a breakdown of liabilities, and a note that read, "As of March 1st, 100% ownership has transferred to Rachel E. Rivers." At 2:17 a.m., I turned off the lights, locked the front door, and dropped the old keys into the outgoing mail tray labeled "For Deborah." The next morning, I arrived early before anyone else. I wore black slacks, a blazer, and a name tag I had printed myself. Dr. R. Rivers, program director, the receptionist, was already there, flipping through her phone. She looked up, blinked. "Oh," she said, recognition dawning. "You're—" I nodded once. She didn't finish her question. She just stood silently and handed me a fresh cup of coffee. No cream, just the way I'd requested it when we met during the paperwork handoff last week. The first guests began to arrive around 9, and then her, Deborah Carter. She breezed through the front door in a pale peach pantsuit and nude heels. Her lips were glossed, her nails long and squared. She carried a clipboard and a wireless mic headset around her neck, like she was about to host a morning talk show. Behind her, Alyssa, in a white satin blouse and matching trousers. Her hair was curled again. They didn't notice me at first. Not until they reached the reception desk and saw the laminated signs. Not until Deborah turned to the young receptionist and asked, "Where's the main setup?" "The floral team was supposed to be here by now. They canceled," the girl said plainly. "Events off. Management changed." Deborah blinked. What I stepped forward, then coffee in hand, clipboard tucked under my arm. "Good morning," I said. "You'll need to collect your things. This location is no longer part of the Carter portfolio." Deborah froze. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She looked at me the way someone might look at a portrait that moved. Alyssa stood beside her, clutching a half-empty iced coffee. Her hand trembled and the ice clinked against the plastic. She looked at me, then back at the signs, then at Mom. "I'm sorry, who are you?" Deborah finally managed to say, voice thin. I didn't flinch. "I'm Dr. Rivers," I said. "Property owner, clinical director." Dad entered next, late as always, adjusting his collar and looking around like he'd arrived to take credit for something. "Where's the press table?" he called out. "You didn't set it up yet." He spotted me. Paused. Then slowly recognition dawned. "You," he said, eyes narrowing. I met his gaze steady. "You'll find everything you need in the office," I said calmly, gesturing toward the back. "A letter from my attorney, termination of access, legal notice of transfer." Deborah stepped forward. "This is our salon," she said sharply, the veneer cracking. "I've been building this for 10 years. "No," I replied. "You built the illusion of it. Ownership has changed. You can't just take this from us," she hissed. "I didn't take anything," I said. "You sold it. You just didn't notice who was buying." Behind her, Alyssa's iced coffee slipped from her grip and hit the floor. The lid popped off. Liquid spread in a slow puddle across the marble tile. No one moved to clean it up. "You're not our daughter anymore." Deborah snapped the final card she always thought would win. I gave her a long look. "I never really was," I said softly. "At least not to you." I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't even raise my voice, because I didn't need to. They had left me bleeding once because they didn't think I mattered. Now I stood in front of them unshaken, uninvited, and undeniably in control. Behind me, a few early guests had trickled in, former clients' curious neighbors. They paused at the door reading the new signage. One of them recognized Deborah and gave her a confused smile. She didn't return it. Instead, Deborah turned, slowly walked past me without a word, heels clicking faster than before. Ron followed, muttering something under his breath, and Alyssa trailed last, dabbing her eyes with the sleeve of her blouse like she wasn't sure if she was crying or just embarrassed. No one looked back. I didn't expect them to. When the door shut behind them, there was no applause, no celebration, just silence. But it was the kind that fills a room, not empties it. The receptionist looked at me. "What now?" I exhaled slowly. "Now we build something better." And we did not open the salon that day. We began transforming it, ripping out vanity stations and replacing them with soft chairs and low tables, removing product shelves and installing warm lighting, setting up small private rooms, each with a name: hope, grounding, renewal. One of the mirrors had a crack in the corner. I kept it, because not everything broken has to be hidden. At noon, a delivery arrived, a box of new signs for the front window. I opened it myself and pulled out the first panel. It was simple white text on frosted glass. "The Resilience Room. No curls, no glitter, no slogans, just space. For the ones who had no space before." I held it up, let the light catch it, and smiled. Not the kind of smile you fake for photos. The kind that stays behind your eyes even after the room goes quiet again. They didn't disappear completely. People like my parents rarely do. They linger in reputation, in whispers, in curated Facebook posts filled with half-truths and full filters. Within a week of the salon's closure, I started hearing things. They said you were unstable. They said you held a grudge, that the car accident was just an accident and you've exaggerated everything since. They told the neighborhood it was a misunderstanding, that I had gone dark for years, that they had done their best with a daughter who never appreciated anything. The word vengeful came up more than once. Deborah even posted a photo on her socials, an old one from when I was maybe 15, standing between her and Alyssa at some family BBQ. I looked uncomfortable. Alyssa was glowing. The caption read, "Some people never heal. They just hurt others. Family matters." Let Go Alyssa reposted it with a heart emoji. It didn't sting the way it might have before, because by then I wasn't just surviving, I was building. The salon's rebranding wasn't just cosmetic. We gutted it from the inside out, stripped the walls, repainted in soft neutrals, replaced product shelves with bookshelves, installed therapy pods where the wash sinks used to be, brought in plants light, and most importantly, doors that locked from the inside. I hired 2 counselors, one in her early 30s, who specialized in adolescent trauma, and one nearing retirement who had spent her career working with survivors of domestic neglect. Their first question to me wasn't about money. It was, "What's the goal?" I said. "Make sure no one sits where I sat and thinks they're being dramatic for hurting." They both nodded. I had applied for my trauma counseling license under my new name, Dr. Rachel E. Rivers. The woman who guided me through the process, Dr. Lillian Cross, was quiet, direct, and saw through every polite smile I tried to wear. She never asked for the full story, but she never let me dodge either. The day I handed in my final paperwork, she said, "You're not just doing this to heal, are you?" "No," I said. "I'm doing this to make room." "Good," she said, and signed the approval without another word. The resilience room opened softly. No ribbon cutting, no cameras, just an unlocked door. Our first client was a 17-year-old named Maya. She walked in with her foster mother clutching a tote bag like a shield. I greeted her at the desk. She didn't meet my eyes. That was okay. I didn't need her to. I gave her a tour slow and without flourish. When we reached the therapy room marked stillness, she finally looked at me. "This place doesn't smell like a hospital," she said. "No," I replied. "It's not supposed to." She nodded once. That was all. It was enough. As the weeks passed, word spread not about my family but about the space. Teens who had been silently carrying too much started to show up. Some came with foster parents. Some came alone. Some walked in with defiant eyes and arms crossed, prepared to be misunderstood. We didn't push. We let the silence stretch. Let the air hold them until they were ready to speak. And slowly something shifted. One girl asked if she could draw on the wall in the back room. I said yes. By the end of the week, it was covered in words like, "You matter," "Not your fault," "Still here." Someone left a pair of ballet shoes on the bench. A boy wrote poetry on sticky notes and hid them inside the bookshelves. One child left a note taped to the mirror in the waiting room, "Thank you for not saying, 'Get over it.'" It didn't take long for people to ask who started the center. I never hid my name, but I never advertised it either. The local paper requested an interview. I agreed under one condition: no mention of my family, no tragedy angles, no redemption spin, just the mission. They ran a quiet feature titled, "The Resilience Room Where Healing Starts Without Explaining." I framed the article, tucked it behind the reception desk. A week later, I received a letter. The envelope was thin, the handwriting sharp and familiar. From Alyssa. I didn't open it right away. I left it on my desk for a full day. Finally, late one evening after the last client had left, I broke the seal. No greeting, no apology, just 2 sentences. "How does it feel to ruin your own family? Don't expect anyone to come running when you fall next time." I read it once, then again, and I smiled, not out of cruelty, but because it confirmed something I already knew: they hadn't changed. Not really. They'd just lost their power to edit the story. I folded the letter, placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk under a stack of intake forms, and didn't think about it again. The next morning, I wore a dark blue sweater and flats. No makeup. I stood by the front window watching the sun stretch across the sidewalk. Dr. Cross arrived a little after 9. She carried a thermos of mint tea and a stack of files. She paused when she saw me. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Feels strange," I admitted. "Being done with the storm." She tilted her head. "Done," she said softly. "You think healing's about being done?" I blinked. She smiled. "It's not. It's about not needing their rain to know you've got roots." She walked past me into her office. I stood there a moment longer, her words circling. Roots. Not revenge, not applause, not even justice. Just stability. Quiet. Growth. That evening I stayed late. The front room had gone quiet save for the low hum of the air purifier. The lights were dimmed, the plants watered the chairs, aligned just right. There was something sacred in the silence now, not the kind that isolates, but the kind that listens. I walked into the therapy room labeled stillness, sat in the same chair I offered to every client, let my spine sink into the cushion, let my hands rest, and I breathed. It wasn't a grand moment, no soundtrack, no breakthrough tears, just the absence of tension I'd carried for so long I forgot I could put it down. I glanced at the mirror in the corner. The one with a tiny hairline crack in the upper left edge. Most people would have replaced it. I hadn't. It reminded me that something could reflect clearly even with damage. That imperfection doesn't distort it, just adds texture. A soft knock came on the doorframe. Dr. Cross peeked in. "Didn't think you'd still be here," she said. "I like the quiet," I replied. She stepped in and leaned against the doorway. "We're hosting a roundtable next month," she said. "Therapists with lived experience. Would you want to join?" I hesitated, not because I was afraid, but because for the first time I realized I didn't need to say yes to prove anything. "I'll think about it," I said. She nodded. "Good. That's the healthiest answer I've heard all day." Then she smiled and left me to the silence again. When I finally gathered my things to head out, I passed the front window and noticed something tucked into the frame. A note. No envelope, just folded pale pink paper. I opened it. No name, no return address, just one sentence written in uncertain handwriting. "Thank you for making a place where I don't feel invisible." I held the paper for a long time, longer than I'd held the one Alyssa sent, because this one mattered. It wasn't about the past. It wasn't about accusation or blame. It wasn't about rewriting a history that had already burned. It was about what came after. That night I left the resilience room with the lights still glowing behind me. Not all of them. Just enough to say, "We're here. You're seen. Keep going." And as I locked the door behind me, I whispered something I hadn't said aloud in years. Not, "I'm fine." Not, "I forgive them." Not, "It's over." Just, "I'm home." The letter arrived on a Wednesday. Heavy envelope, cream stock, embossed seal. The kind of thing people only send when they want it to feel like something official. I opened it with a butter knife at my kitchen counter, the ceramic mug of chamomile cooling nearby. The invitation inside was printed in gold script, too ornate to be sincere. The Carter Family Annual Gala, honoring local legacy, hosted by Deborah and Ron Carter. I blinked, then read it again. The back listed sponsors, a catered dinner, and a look back at the journey that built the Carter name in this town. The irony, dripping, thick. I set it down, sipped the tea. It had gone bitter. It wasn't the invite itself that struck me, it was the fact that it came at all. After everything, after 5 years of silence or slander, there was no note, no explanation, no, "We hope you'll come," just my name on the address label, Rachel Carter. They hadn't used Rivers. I don't think they even knew it. I should have thrown it away, should have let it dissolve in the trash like every version of me they'd tried to erase. But I didn't. Because I knew what this was. Damage control, public image, a reshaping of narrative. They needed the myth to stay alive, the one where they were misunderstood parents and I was the distant daughter who just grew apart. And if I didn't show up, that would become truth. But if I did? I called Dr. Cross that evening. "Tacky invite," I said. She didn't ask for details. She rarely did. "Do you want to go?" she asked. "No," I said. "But I think I need to." She was quiet. Then don't go as the version of you they expect. Go as the one they can't overwrite. I didn't sleep much that night, not because of nerves, but because the moment was already forming. Taking shape, not revenge, not spectacle, just presence. The next day I picked out a black dress. Not loud, not flashy, structured, elegant, mine. I booked a ride not in a limo but a clean black sedan, quiet engine, no small talk. The venue was the same place where they'd once held Alyssa's Sweet 16, a rented ballroom with chandeliers that sparkled a little too hard and round tables with fake gold chargers. I arrived 10 minutes after the start time, on purpose. Let them settle first. Let them be seen. Let them feel the center of the story. Until I walked in. When I stepped through the entrance, the room didn't fall silent. Not yet. The music still played soft jazz, safe and expensive sounding. Conversations floated in the air like perfume. Laughter glass clinks, polite greetings. The rhythm of people who believe the story is under control. I didn't make a scene. I didn't need to. All I did was walk, measured upright, steady past the coat check, past the welcome board with my parents' names, in cursive gold, past a server holding a tray of champagne. People didn't recognize me at first. They looked at my face, paused, frowned, as if trying to recall a dream they almost remembered. And then the shift. Their expressions morphed from polite interest to mild confusion, to something else. Recognition, but not joy, not warmth. Something colder, something like, oh. I walked toward the center of the room where Deborah and Ron stood beneath a banner reading, "Celebrating a Family Legacy of Strength and Service." Of course. Deborah wore a shimmering navy gown, her hair swept into a flawless updo. Ron was in a charcoal suit. Alyssa was beside them in silver, radiant as ever. They were laughing with two women I didn't know, probably from the Rotary Club or the town's business association. I didn't interrupt. I simply stood nearby, waited. And then Deborah saw me. Her smile faltered. Just a flicker, but it was enough. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Rachel," she said, her voice tight around the edges. I gave a small nod. Heads turned. Ron turned. Alyssa turned. Their expressions each broke in a different way. Ron stiffened. Alyssa's jaw clicked shut. Deborah's hand clenched slightly around the stem of her champagne glass. "I wasn't sure you'd gotten the invitation," she said, tone cool. "I did," I said, simply. I didn't add more, didn't thank her, didn't ask why. Silence is a sharper tool when wielded with purpose. "You look..." "Well," Ron said, though he didn't sound convinced. "I am," I replied. Alyssa shifted on her heels. "I didn't know you were in town. I never left." That was the first time a hush started to fall around us, just faint, like the ripple that comes before a wave. I caught the eye of someone across the room, a woman from the city council, I think, watching with thinly veiled curiosity. Deborah forced a smile. "Well, I'm sure you're very busy." "What is it you're doing now?" "I run a trauma recovery clinic," I said, "right here in town." Another ripple. "Oh," she said. "I repurposed the old salon space," I added. "You might remember it." Deborah's face twitched. The smile cracked slightly. Alyssa swallowed. Ron looked down at his glass. I didn't press, didn't list accolades, didn't brag, didn't explain. The silence did it for me. Around us, conversations were shifting. I wasn't the center, but I was no longer invisible, and they could feel it. I saw it in the stiffness of Deborah's posture, in Alyssa's darting eyes, in Ron's tight grip on the rim of his glass. The illusion was unraveling, and all I had done was show up. A man approached someone from the local business guild by the badge on his lapel. "I heard you opened the resilience room," he said. "That's you, isn't it?" I nodded. He offered his hand. "My niece goes there. Says it's the only place she doesn't feel like a problem to be fixed." I shook his hand quietly. "Thank you for saying that." He smiled, then turned to Deborah. "Quite a daughter you have here. You must be proud." There it was. The moment. Deborah blinked. Her smile faltered again, this time with no way to hide it. Her mouth opened slightly like she wanted to grab the narrative back, but no words came. Ron cleared his throat. "She's always been independent," he offered. The man didn't notice the awkward pause. "Well, it's good to see young people giving back. Real legacy work." And then he drifted away. Just like that. I didn't need to stay longer. The room had shifted, not against them, not toward me, but open, questioning. The myth was cracking, and I hadn't raised my voice once. "I should go," I said. Alyssa looked at me, then really looked. For a brief second, I thought I saw something behind her eyes. Not apology, not warmth, but recognition. The kind you give a ghost when it finally takes solid form. "I didn't know it was that bad for you," she said quietly. I didn't answer. "Because what do you say to that? You knew enough. You just didn't care enough to name it." Instead, I gave a small smile. Not bitter, just done. "Take care," I said. And I turned. I walked slowly past the buffet, past the gift table with the Carter family name etched in gold, past the wall of framed photos showing every stage of their legacy. None of them included me. It didn't matter. I stepped outside into the cool air, the sky a deep navy brushed with stars. No one followed, no one called my name, and for the first time it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like peace. The driver was waiting by the car, hands folded in front of him. As I approached, my phone buzzed, a notification from the Resilience Room's shared inbox. I opened it. A new inquiry. A 16-year-old girl, first name only, wants to talk, doesn't know where to start. I smiled, slid into the back seat, and replied, "You already have." As the car pulled away, I looked back once, not at the building, not at the banner, at my own reflection in the window, still, unbothered, enough. The seatbelt clicked softly. The driver didn't speak. The radio was off. And in the silence, I breathed. Not to brace for something, just because I could. We opened the Resilience Room officially 3 weeks after the gala. No ribbon, no camera crews, no speeches from mayors, just a soft launch, a circle of chairs, a tray of muffins someone's aunt had baked, and a pot of tea that never ran out. I stood at the edge of the room that morning, letting the quiet settle around me like a coat I'd finally grown into. The clinic had evolved over the months more than I planned, maybe even more than I imagined. The stillness room now had soundproof walls and a gentle scent of cedar and citrus. Grounding had cozy floor cushions and soft beanbags always rearranged by the teens who used them. We didn't correct them. This space was never about control. It was about choosing your own seat. That day, our first open circle began at 10 a.m. The topic wasn't chosen by me, it was voted on anonymously the week before. Theme: what happens when no one believes you? 10 chairs filled. 1 stayed empty. I didn't ask why. People spoke in halves, half sentences, half thoughts. One girl said, "It's like screaming into water," and no one asked her to explain. They just nodded. Some cried, some didn't. No one was forced into either. Halfway through, I shared something I hadn't planned. Not a full story, just one line I once bled in a car while the people who said they loved me kept driving. No one gasped. No one asked for more, but one hand across the circle reached down and touched the floor. Palm flat. Quiet understanding. When the circle ended, people lingered. A boy asked if we had a punching pillow room. We didn't yet. 2 girls traded numbers under the window with the frosted decal, the Resilience Room. Dr. Cross passed me a cup of tea afterward, her eyes soft but proud. "You're not just healing," she said. "You're shifting gravity." I smiled, tired but full. Later that afternoon, we hosted an open house for community members. Nothing formal, just a walk through free brochures, some lemon cookies from a bakery next door. People came. Not hundreds, but enough. A woman from the local library brought her niece. A retired firefighter stayed longer than he meant to, tracing his hand along the edge of the bookcase. Someone asked if we needed volunteers. Someone else asked if we'd consider opening another one closer to the high school. I said maybe, because maybe now was a possibility. 2 days after the open house, I received another letter. No return address again. Same sharp handwriting, same small envelope. This time the paper inside was lined notebook paper torn from a spiral pad, the kind you find in school backpacks and kitchen junk drawers. It wasn't from a client. It was from Alyssa. The handwriting hadn't changed since we were kids, rounded almost too neat like she'd practiced for yearbook dedications and birthday cards. There were no pleasantries, no dear Rachel, no date, just the words, "You made your point." I read that line a few times. Then the next, "I hope it was worth it." No apology, no reflection. No mention of the crash or the hospital or the way I'd clawed my way through broken glass while she got a blowout. Only a single closing sentence, "You ruined your own family." I didn't. I folded the paper once, twice, then slid it into the drawer where I kept intake forms, pens, and unopened holiday mail. It didn't belong to me. Not anymore. That same afternoon, Maya, the girl who'd first commented on the scent of our therapy rooms, returned for her 4th session. She brought a handmade bracelet of blue and gray thread and asked if I wanted it. I made one for myself too, she said. I wear it when I want to remind myself I don't live there anymore. I live here. I took it gently, tied it around my wrist with fingers steadier than I remembered having at 17. She grinned and bounced into her session, her steps lighter than the week before. When her hour ended, she left behind a sticky note on the waiting room mirror. I didn't know people like you existed. Thank you for not leaving. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't moved, but because the feeling went deeper than tears. That evening, after everyone had gone, I turned off the lights one by one. The halls glowed in amber. The building was warm, lived in. Before locking up, I paused in the reflection room, formerly the front lobby. The windows still showed the street, but from here it looked softer somehow, like even the traffic had quieted down. I sat on the floor. No music, no planner, no badge, just me, and the stillness I had spent years carving out of noise. I took off my shoes, let my palms rest flat on the ground. I wasn't thinking about Deborah, or Ron, or Alyssa. I wasn't waiting for recognition or understanding. I wasn't proving anything. I just sat. And for the first time in my entire life, I didn't feel like something people forgot to take care of. I felt like someone who had built something worth keeping. A week later, we hosted our first community night. No therapy, no forms, no deep questions, just cocoa, storytelling. Paper lanterns strung across the ceiling. People filtered in slowly, parents, teens, even a few elderly neighbors who'd read about the place in the paper. Dr. Cross brought brownies. A local poet read something that made 2 people cry and 1 girl laugh. I didn't speak until the end. Not because I hadn't been asked, but because I wanted to listen first. When I finally stepped forward, the room quieted with the kind of stillness that only comes when no one's waiting to interrupt. I cleared my throat, smiled gently, and said, I once bled in a car while the people I loved drove away to make an appointment. A pause, soft rustles, no gasps, just breath. And I thought that moment would define me forever. That pain was the only language I'd ever speak. My eyes scanned the room. They weren't wide with shock. They were steady, present. But I was wrong. It wasn't the moment that defined me. It was what came next. The breath I still had. The steps I still took. I raised one hand slightly palm open. And if you've ever been left behind unseen or unheard, this room is yours now too. A teen clapped first, then another, and suddenly there was applause, not thunderous, not forced, but sincere. Afterward, a woman hugged me. No words. Another left a note on the welcome desk. You gave me permission to stop apologizing for surviving. That night after locking up, I walked home instead of driving. It was cool out, the kind of night that slips into your sleeves and reminds you what your skin feels like. The stars were out. I passed the salon that used to hold my silence. Now it held stories, names, roots. At the corner, I paused at a crosswalk. A car drove past. Not fast, but familiar. I didn't flinch. I just stepped onto the next sidewalk, 1 foot in front of the other. At home, I peeled off my shoes and jacket, lit 1 candle, and sat at my table alone, not lonely. Across from me, the letter from Alyssa still sat in the drawer. I didn't reach for it. I reached for a blank sheet of paper. At the top, I wrote, "What I know now." Then I smiled, because the list was long, and nowhere in it was the word permission. I didn't need it anymore. Some stories don't end with doors slamming or names shouted across crowded rooms. Some just close quietly, like a book returned to the right shelf. And sometimes the silence afterward is the loudest part.